Revenge films.
The story is about the time before I moved into my current apartment. My grandfather was a landowner, and on one of his properties, he was getting ready to build a high-rise condo. A construction company had approached him and asked him to sell this piece of land to them so that they could build the condo. My grandfather was reluctant to sell his land to them. The construction company really wanted that piece of land, so they wouldn't give up so easily. At the time, I was a newlywed and had gotten married the year before. I was living with my husband in his rented 2-bedroom apartment. My grandfather was very resistant to the idea of selling his property to the construction company, but because the company was so persistent, my mother suggested that, "If you build a new condo here, Sarah and I could move here and we'll be closer to you. Doesn't that sound like a lovely idea? Wouldn't you like to see Sarah more often?" What my mother suggested seemed like a good idea to me. My husband's apartment was an hour drive from my grandfather's place, so I didn't get to see him as much as I wanted to. We were pregnant with our first child, and I relished the idea of being closer to my family. My husband and I were considering moving to a bigger place once the baby arrived. I love living here, but once we become a family of 3, there won't be enough space. This might be a good time to consider moving to a bigger place. I think we should try to find a place that's closer to your office. That way you won't have as long a commute.
You're right. We should try to decide on a new place before the baby arrives. Once it arrives, we'll be too busy to move. Let's start looking for a new place now!
I loved spending time with my grandfather as a child, and it excited me to think that I'd be living closer to him. I was really happy that my mother had suggested this. A part of me was unsure if it was okay for me to rely on my grandfather so much, though. I wasn't a child anymore. With that, he agreed to sell his property to the construction company and build a high-rise condo. Now that I think of it, I wasn't sure why my grandfather was so opposed to the idea in the first place. The construction company was thrilled with my grandfather's decision. There was one condition that my grandfather stated to the company. It was that they let my husband and I live in the penthouse of the new condo. Being able to live in the penthouse was like a dream. We would also be given an exclusive access to the rooftop. I was already imagining fun barbecues on the rooftop. The construction company agreed to my grandfather's proposal, and they offered to sell the penthouse to us at a very reasonable price. When I told my husband about this, he was really happy because it meant that he could live in a really nice place and also be closer to his workplace. He said that he felt like he'd won the lottery or something. The construction of the condo began. The condo was situated in a really nice neighborhood, and the design of the building was very classy, which made it very popular. The rooms in the condo quickly sold out. Up until that point, everything was going great. But then we found out that the penthouse that we were supposed to live in was sold to someone else for a very high price. We had no idea who had done this to us. We were all too busy being happy about the fact that our family would be closer to one another. My grandfather had already purchased some gorgeous new furniture for our penthouse. He even bought some nice things for our unborn baby. My husband and I were ready to move into the penthouse. When we found out about what had happened, we were very shocked. My grandfather was furious because the construction company had broken their promise.
You deceived me! My granddaughter and her husband were ready to move into that penthouse! What have you done? Do you not remember that you promised me in exchange for me selling you my piece of land?
To my grandfather's horror, the man working at the construction company didn't show any sign of regret for what he had done.
We don't remember promising you anything! We don't have anything in writing, so what you say is not valid!
Luckily, we hadn't asked the movers to come move our stuff yet, but it looked like the construction company was going to turn on us. There was no financial loss for my husband and I, but I apologized to my husband for all the chaos. I was prepared to forget about the penthouse and move on, but my grandfather didn't want to. He was really looking forward to having us move closer to him, and he was really angry at the construction company for their fraudulent ways. He visited the company many times to get them to own up to their malicious ways, but they never made any time for him. We felt bad for causing strain on my grandfather. "You don't have to go see the construction company anymore. This is not your fault. We can find a different place to move to." But my grandfather didn't want to let this go. He wanted the construction company to own up to what they did. And they had no idea that having my grandfather as their enemy would mean that their business would suffer immensely. The construction company had no idea that the land that my grandfather sold to them was only a part of the large piece of land that he owned throughout the city. The people that had bought the rooms in the newly built condo would have to pass through my grandfather's private property to access the condo. My grandfather had been kind enough to allow the residents of the condo to pass through his property, but now that the construction company had deceived him, he wouldn't allow it any longer. Because my grandfather was angry, he forbid anyone from trespassing on his private property. As a result, the residents of the condo had to use a very narrow path to access the building. The path could only be accessed on foot, by bicycle, or by a small bike. It was impossible to access the parking lot of the condo, so the residents that traveled by car were faced with a huge problem now. This was a huge issue for the construction company, and they came to see my grandfather, but he wouldn't have anything to do with them. He told them that if any of the residents wanted to pass through his property, they should ask for approval each time by giving my grandfather a call. The man working at the construction company asked if there was a nearby parking lot that they could rent out for the residents. But as it turns out, my grandfather owned all the parking lots in that area, and there was no way that he would rent out space to the construction company. The residents of the condo were unhappy about the current situation, and they sent complaints to the company every day. The CEO of the construction company begged for my grandfather's forgiveness. The CEO, along with the man from the company that asked my grandfather to sell his land in the first place, were apologizing to my grandfather profusely.
We are very sorry about the way we handle matters with regards to the building of the condo. Would you be so kind to sell us a piece of land so that we could build a new parking lot for the residents?
It seemed that the employee had pestered my grandfather to sell his land so that he could build a new condo and increase his sales numbers at the company. He then went ahead and broke his promise with my grandfather because if he sold the penthouse at a high price, his sales numbers would be even better and he would get a lucrative bonus. He didn't expect what he did would affect all the other residents of the condo. The CEO nervously waited to see how my grandfather would respond to his pleas.
We have asked the couple living in the penthouse to move out. We will be introducing them to a different penthouse in a different building. We will sell the penthouse to you as initially promised after thoroughly cleaning it beforehand. Why do I have to give my precious granddaughter a penthouse which is now secondhand? I wanted her to live in a brand new place that no one has lived in before.
My grandfather wasn't going to give in that easily. He was still really angry. To that, the CEO suggested,
We have a new condo being built as we speak. How about we offer your family the new penthouse there? The penthouse there is more spacious and luxurious. We think that your granddaughter and her husband would be happy there.
My grandfather thought about the proposal and agreed to take a look at the new condo as soon as it was completed. I could see what the CEO had said about the new condo. The penthouse was even more gorgeous than the first, and I fell in love with it right away. I really love this place. It's beautiful. My grandfather was no longer angry after seeing my happy face. In the end, all he wanted was for his family to be happy. We agreed to the company's proposal, and we were able to buy the place for a really good price. The CEO was relieved that we had accepted his proposal.
That's the least we can do. Thank you so much. We can't thank you enough. You need to apologize once more for what you've done.
I'm so sorry for all the trouble that I've caused you. I hope that you will find in your heart to forgive me.
After that, the CEO and employee went back to their office. We found out later that the married couple that had bought the penthouse in the first condo had approached the employee and asked if they could buy it. The employee said that if the couple paid him some money on the side, he would do what he could to get them into the penthouse. The couple were well off, so they didn't mind paying extra cash to the man. That was why the employee broke his promise with my grandfather and sold the penthouse, which was initially built for my husband and I. My grandfather heard about this from one of his acquaintances, and he decided to allow the residents of the condo to use one of his parking lots for free. As for the couple that tried to bribe the employee using money, he didn't give them any kind of special treatment, and they had to use the narrow path, which was public property. In the end, the employee was fired for taking a bribe and was arrested by the police. Of course, he also had to return the bonus he received for selling the penthouse. The couple that bribed the employee got off with a warning from the CEO of the construction company. My husband and I moved into the new penthouse that the CEO had prepared for us as planned. The penthouse was really beautiful, and it was everything that I dreamed about. Our kitchen and bathroom were top of the line, and we had a beautiful view of the city.
I feel like this place is too good to be true.
It was a gift from my grandfather, and he wants us to be happy. He's happy now that we're living closer to him. A A few months after that, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. My grandfather instantly fell in love with her and showered her with love and gifts. My grandfather liked to spoil me, but now that my daughter's born, he was happy to spoil her like he did me. I was thrilled to have my grandfather living closer to me so that we could spend lots of quality time together as a family.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.